Are we officially called to order?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I apologize. I didn't get really any time to review what Margaret sent out today, so I don't know what if someone else would like to take the lead on this.
And I want to apologize too. I didn't get the minutes out and because I just totally got busy with work. It's been a crazy few days because of we're now all having to do, you know, schoolwork and kids are calling and stressed. And so I apologize.
There wasn't much from today. I sent an email earlier today and I've been kind of going back and forth with myself, and June and I have been constantly in communication about what is coming from the state and what isn't coming from the state. We're getting to the point that we're a bit frustrated with the with how long it's taking DLS to come out with guidance, and it makes us feel like we're spinning our wheels a bit. So the only things that I've done to the budget without rehashing everything from last week is I made a couple of changes since your last meeting, and they're shown at the end of the budget expense worksheet, workbook. The first one is line, and I did add, you know, last week you were going back and forth between the budget worksheet itself and the end of it. This time I decided, you know, I'll just add, I got that was column. I added the is column from last week, and I put in another is column with the two changes. So it just shows the old number and the new number. So the first one is line 14, audit. I said that I was going to try to get, we were going to try to get a lower price, and we did get $2,000 off the FY21 number. So that number was already reduced from FY20, so now it's further reduced. And then line 54, building inspector salary, that number had to be adjusted to reflect the level funded FY20 salary, so that went down a whopping 36.
I can't find the was in the is.
Way down at the bottom of the end of page 7.
Yeah, I'm on, I thought I was there, but I guess.
Page 7, which is called what?
It's the draft FY21 Berlin budget. It's the very last page of the expense, the budget expense sheet. Not the revenue summary, but the budget.
FY21 expenses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I sent it. I
see was is.
I don't see was is.
It's line 201. Starts on line 199. Columns A through So you have to have, if it looks like F through M have to be hidden for you to see.
Yeah, I can't open it up. Can you show it to us, Mike? Can you share it?
I don't know if I can I?
I could. Well, yeah, I think I can, but first I'm going to have to go in and get it. Hold on.
Well, you know, I think if you let me share, then I can share.
You all can share, but Margaret, isn't it in the folder from last night's meeting?
Yeah, I think so.
So
it's in PDF there, but. So Janet, I sent this spreadsheet earlier today.
Oh, I looked at it. I just don't.
So it's the very last tab on the right.
So when I go to the very last tab, which is FY21 expenses, and I click on it, correct?
You go way down to the bottom.
And I go way to the bottom, all I have is a bunch of blank lines with some yellow and some, it doesn't.
Mary, page 7.
Go over to the left-hand side, Janet.
I'm all the way to the left-hand side. I still don't see it. I'm sorry.
Okay, Mary's got the PDF here. Hopefully I put in the one that.
No. Oh, yeah, right there.
Yeah, I did. Okay. All right, so here's a PDF version of it anyway. Nothing has changed. So there you go. See, audit, 28, now it's 26. Building inspector salary was 92,536. It's 92,500 now.
Okay.
Okay.
But the selectmen haven't voted on anything, so we really can't do anything. Am I correct?
No. So what I explained to the board last night after much back and forth is this obviously the budget and the revenues are really not a one size fits all. You know, there are some lines in the budget that simply cannot be touched because they are a non-discretionary obligation the town must pay. Where other lines, there might be some flexibility. So what I'm going to have to do, and I'm going to be starting on Monday night, is I'm going to be going back to my recommendations that I previously made to the board, and I will make revised recommendations on those lines that we do have some flexibility in. So I'm going to try to tackle as many lines as possible because, as you know, the board was really far along in their approvals before all of this COVID stuff, and Finance Committee had made some progress too. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to present revised recommendations on various budget lines that we do have some flexibility in. Meanwhile, I'm really, we need to be focused on revenues here. And I think the Finance Committee has done a good job with the percent reduction scenarios. But without additional information that we need from the state, again, we're spinning our wheels here a little bit, and it's getting a bit frustrating.
Well, I actually was going to call and say, why are we even holding this meeting tonight? Because
I think it's good. I think it's good to stay in touch. I think it's good even if there is some small updates. And you know what? There is some good news. June can probably speak to this better than I can because she's worked with our auditors a long time. We actually had our exit interview with the auditors that follows the annual audit. And the town, June, what is it? We have 16% cash reserves in our undesignated fund. We have, is it, or in the?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact amount, but he said that we're in really good shape compared to other people right now, towns now. We are in really good shape, and we should be proud of ourselves where we've gotten to this point, that he feels that we should be able to get out of this.
Yep.
I don't want to say without any damage, but with minimal damage or cuts or.
Yeah.
I mean,
we have stabilization capacity. We are able to stabilize. There are towns out there that actually set, and I know this firsthand, that set that cash reserves threshold at about 5%. 5% of the, is it the undesignated fund balance? I think, I don't have the sheets in front of me. We're at 16%. The town is fiscally healthy, and yes, the town should be really proud. And not only that, if we plan accordingly, we were talking last week about that whole contingency idea in the budget. If we plan for something like that to be able to absorb revenue shortfalls next year, we're going to remain in good shape. So these are things we need to be thinking about putting in place.
Can I ask, does that 16%, does that include the stabilization?
It does. It includes, I think it included, June?
It would be the available funds between free cash, the stabilization fund. I'm trying to think, there was a couple of other things that we have designated as other financing. I want to say it also includes things like the old special articles that are still floating around that technically we could close if we had to and use that.
Return money then, is that basically right?
Yeah.
And
so
we have a low debt ratio on top of all of that.
This year though, that is going to change because we are going to have to make that first payment for the new highway barn. I think the big thing is that like Buzz had always talked about too, is that to keep that stabilization fund for that rainy day fund to be able to stabilize things if we should hit a roadblock. And I think that's what we've done. So it's just going to be a matter of keeping in mind that we can keep things pretty much the way that the town is used to having services provided, possibly, and be able to still get through this. It's just a matter of we may have to take a few more years to recushion those funds or replenish those funds after this. And hopefully this only lasts for this coming year and into the next. And then hopefully we can start to look again at the economy getting better. And
I have one question, totally unrelated to this because I don't want to forget, but did our FinCom report get to selectmen on Monday night?
No, it got to Margaret late, like not till today.
Okay, well, it's done, right?
That's
Yes.
excellent.
Okay, okay.
So Margaret, when you say it's 16%, the reserve is 16% of the annual budget?
No, I think it's 16% of, well, it's not the annual budget, it's the undesignated fund balance. So it's the town's entire pot of money. It's not just the operating budget. June, do you have terms that you could use to explain?
Unfortunately, I don't off the top of my head right now. Sorry, it's been a long day.
I can.
I think it's 16% is pretty much based on their overall revenues and the position as far as what we have set aside in proportion to what our budget is. I believe that's what it has to do.
For the purpose of my notes, can I just write 16% cash revenue available, or how do I verbiage that?
16% cash reserves.
Reserve.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And then it was money, I mean, I won't put this in the notes, but stabilization fund, free cash, and then
Other
return
available
money.
fundings.
Okay.
What was that, June?
It was just other available funds.
Oh,
that
other available funding,
used.
okay.
Say, Margaret, on the waiting for news on state from the state, would that be the state aid portion of the income?
It would be. It would be. And we know with lottery taking about a 30% hit at the moment, we know that so the unrestricted general government aid, I think that's one of those lines where we talk about not, you know, I don't know, I'm drawing a blank now. I think I did this last week, didn't I? I kept on drawing blanks. So like we can't treat every revenue line the same either, just like we can't do, we can't treat every budget line the same. I think there's probably going to be a disproportionate hit on our unrestricted general government aid. That's the fourth line from the top under sources of funds. I think that's going to be one of those lines that's hit more so than other state aid lines. At least we've seen, June, you've seen 9C hits in the past too. But that's usually what we see the biggest hits to is the unrestricted general government aid.
Mm.
Schools, you know, the regional schools, Chapter 70 school aid, their Chapter 70 might take a hit as well. I don't know, but that's not on the town side here.
Is this too much to ask? I mean, you're talking about how you can revisit budget line items that you can recommend other changes. Is it too much to ask for us to go, you know, 1 through 114 and like say which of those line items that you potentially could be looking at? Is that asking too much?
I would almost say almost every budget line item is going to have to be relooked at. It's not going to be.
Absolutely. I agree with June. Every single budget line will have to be looked at.
And I also think that we're going to have to decide whether or not you want to do, you know, level funding for pay increases. We could possibly even may have to go back and relook at contracts.
I'm going to, yeah. And I'm going to say we have, there is a bit, you know, there's disparity between COLA increases for town employees and employees in collective bargaining units, maybe in teachers' contracts, things like that. We have, today I was actually looking at our increased health insurance costs for the coming year. And an employee, regardless of whether or not they are part of a collective bargaining unit, an employee in the town who is on a family plan, a PPO family plan, is going to see about a $600 increase in health insurance costs next year. So frankly, I would like to see us try to salvage some of the increase to employees so they don't take disproportionate hits.
Like
So,
50 bucks a month.
$600. Well, $600 a year is the health insurance, health and dental impact on an employee on a family.
That's going to be 20. They get paid every 2 weeks. I'm thinking a teacher.
Every week.
Teachers get paid every week?
No. Town employees.
Oh, so 600 divided by 52, it's 11 bucks a week. I mean, that's way lower than most people are getting hit with. I know it's less than just my dental and vision that I got increased. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that's a big hit. I'm just saying, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think that's too bad, $11 a week.
No, but
when you look at it that way, I'm just saying. I mean, rather than changing things. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
I will always.
Sorry, I was going to say, I'm a little confused because you started off by saying that there were certain things that we can't touch, there's nothing we can do about, we're obligated. But that's now right. You're saying we need to relook at every single line. So I think that's, Jenna, is that kind of what you were getting at?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to get at.
No, I think what June, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I think what June is saying is we need to go through every single line. Yes, there are going to be some lines that don't have any.
Yeah, like there's some lines that we can't do anything about. Worcester County retirement, there's nothing we can do about that payment that needs to be made. So I'm talking about looking at every single line, even if it's just to relook at that line and say, okay, there's nothing we can do here.
Okay, I guess I when you say relook at it, to me that means acting on it.
Correct. But I mean, we're gonna have to go back and we're gonna have to look at it. We're also gonna it's just so hard right now because we don't have anything to actually go by right now. So we're like jumping from one extreme to the other extreme to let's combine a little bit, but oh no, let's try to this. We don't know what the outcome is going to be. So I'm feeling and I don't mean this in a rude way, but we're wasting a ton of energy trying to come up with ideas that we have no idea what the answers are going to be. I think our best bet right now is to look at things to see what we actually have in depth so we can say, oh, we need 10 grand. Where can we come up with that? Well, we could possibly do it between here, here, and here.
Yeah.
I still think that we are in better shape than most. And I think that we're going to have to look at it as a whole for the town as to where do we want to be? Do we want to try to fund some of these things using free cash, which is not the way we normally would, have money to cover the operating budget. But this year we may have to do that if you feel that in the best interest of the town would be to level some of the expenses or to keep some of the things. I don't really want to say this, but I mean, other towns are talking about possible furloughs or layoffs, but we have to remember here in town is that we don't have unemployment insurances. I just signed up for a class that's going to be held next month in regards to this. Because even if we think we're saving ourselves money, we may not be because those people can go out and collect. And unfortunately, we have to pay more than just the insurance premiums of the cost of unemployment. We have to pay as you go. So there's
what does that mean, June?
You know how in a regular company, you would pay unemployment insurance on a regular basis? With the town, we don't do that. We pay so that if I go and collect, you would have to pay what is owed to me at that point in time.
Does that mean we're like self-insured for unemployment kinds of, is that what that means?
Kind of.
In essence, that's it. We have a line budgeted for unemployment, and when we expend that line, it's gone. And if we have mass layoffs, we're not going to be able to afford paying those claims and things like that.
Now, what does a furlough, explain furlough to me.
Okay, so furloughs can be short-term. A furlough is typically employees are informed that they are going to be off payroll for what? It could be any period of time. Name the period of time.
8
You're
weeks.
furloughed, but with furloughs, you do have to be careful. And I know this from previous experience in one of my former towns that we were looking at that option. With furloughs, if you did a short-term furlough, and believe me, I've been thinking about this too for some of maybe our higher paid employees. If you do a short-term furlough, the employee is not going to be claiming unemployment.
Right.
It's a very short-term. You say, okay, you're furloughed for a week, all right, and so the employer is saving those payroll costs, okay. But when you do a long-term furlough, if you reach that threshold that you're going to be obligated to pay unemployment to that employee, it's not worth this town looking at that option.
And there was also something that they mentioned as far as having to pay benefits of some
Yeah, you have to pay health insurance to all furloughed people.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
I'm
You'd
thinking
still
that
be
in the
paying
long
that.
run, it may cost us more money or the same amount of money getting no services from that person. But I mean, there's just so many things right now that we can come up with. I think it's more just keeping abreast of everything that's going on, keeping updated as far as what suggestions are out there, other ideas to look at. It's just a really scary time. And I think this is just adding to the stress of the whole situation, is trying to figure out which way to go.
You know, I think I didn't look at, those columns that we did have on the spreadsheet before, on the budget spreadsheet, where it said board approved, and then there was a column for FinCom approved. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to find that when we go through those columns again, there are going to be some approvals that have been done that we're not going to have to look at again. Some of those fixed cost lines, some of those non-discretionary lines are just that, non-discretionary. FinCom may have already acted on them. The board may have already acted on them. Just take those right off the table.
Now, Margaret, I haven't really looked at it, and I apologize for asking this question now. But have we actually come down with a bottom line number, just out of curiosity, with some of the cuts and some of the thought process of level funding and things like that? How close are we to having enough revenue to actually offset some of these expenses?
That is a really good question. That's a really good question. So, yes, if you look on the first page, the budget revenue summary sheet,
yeah,
you're in the right-hand column. Oh, I'm sorry, the third from the right-hand column. There's a 14,178,242.
Yep.
Okay, that's the bottom line number right now in that level fund budget. And you see the revenues underneath that are still showing as 14,456,512. That's revenues without the percent reductions. So there, it shows a $278,270 revenue surplus. But if you take the adjusted revenues, that 10%, 14,330,703, that's from the 10% column. It's a number in bold up above.
Which page are you on?
I'm on the first page. The
Of
revenue
which sheet?
summary. First sheet.
It's the first tab, I think, Mike. It's the summary.
Says draft summary ladder, FY21 draft summary ladder payoffs?
No, it's the draft summary. I don't know what it's called. It's the first sheet there.
So the first sheet is the ladder. It says ladder, 1 year ladder.
Okay.
Summary ladder
I'm
payoffs.
looking at paper.
One of the
So
sheets,
what-
the tab says summary. That's the one that Margaret's talking about.
Yes.
And where are you on that now?
I see the shaded area on the top right of that sheet.
No.
Where the 10%,
Oh,
20%.
Wait, I gotta get over here.
It's the
Shaded
first
area.
tab.
Right.
It's the first
Oh,
tab. at the
you're on
workbook.
paper, so you can't see a column number.
Is it this one? Can you see that?
Hang on.
Draft. No, it's
Oh,
this
that-
one. It's this one. Hold on. Where am I? This one, revenue sources.
Yeah, that's not the first tab on anything that I've seen.
Sorry,
That's not the problem.
I'm sorry, yeah. Where is it?
It's the one that says revenue sources, local property taxes, new growth. That's,
Yeah, no, that's the first tab.
it is?
My first tab says 1 year
No.
lateral payoff.
Go, Mary, go to the one page right before that. Go to page 1. Here you go. We're coming to it now.
That's it.
All right. So, all right. So in that orange shaded box, there's a bold, and under the 10% column, there's a bold number 14,330,703. All right.
Finding this, but keep looking.
That's the 10% reduction scenario, not
The third
including.
sheet.
You know what the problem is with me is I can't print these because I don't have this size paper, and then we did this and I don't think we've had an updated, like, so I have to look at it on the screen. I know that sounds crazy, but it's hard. It's hard when
Okay.
you don't have the printed paper.
All right.
It's up on the screen.
Yeah, I'm looking at the screen now,
Okay.
but it has to be shifted to the, like, I can't see any of the yellow.
Okay. Do you see orange?
The yellow orange, yeah, it's not far enough to the,
Hey, Mary, can you scroll up just a little more, please?
it has to be scrolled to the left.
Oh, it does?
It's only 3 columns in the orange. You can see all
Do any
3.
of you do any of you have this page? Do you have this page?
Not, oh, perfect. Thank you. Excellent.
I have it, Margaret.
Okay.
I do not have it. So if you would print one and maybe leave it on the tape to the door, if that's not too much to ask, I'll come down and get it at some
And
point.
if we finish, I can tell you how to print it on regular paper. Just let's finish the thought here.
Oh, all right.
All right, Mary, if you could scroll up just a little so Janet can see. Janet, you do see that 14,330,703, correct? In the orange shaded box?
Yeah. I see it now. Yep.
Okay, so scroll up, Mary. And a little more. There, right there. Oh, down a little. Okay, so.
Okay, a little to the
All right.
left. Oh, that feels good. Yeah, thanks. I had an itch. Sorry.
Great.
I can't get the damn,
So you see the line that says draft operating budget about in the middle of your screen, and the number is 14,176,206.
Yeah.
That's the total of that level fund reduce column on the budget expense sheet. And that 14,330,703 above is revenues with the estimated 10% reductions in certain revenue areas.
So this really isn't as bad as we're thinking it is.
No. So when you look at it that way, if you were to change that, again, in the middle of your screen, that number 14,456,512, that was your original revenues estimate. If you were to change that to the 14,330,703, you still have $152,461 revenue surplus. All right.
Yeah,
So-
but that level funding was pretty
A lot of
draconian.
money.
Yeah, the level funding is pretty, the level funding was pretty extreme, but it shows you that there is still a little bit of leeway here.
Yeah, but I think that, didn't that include, I think that included things that we weren't supposed to be able to touch, I think, didn't it?
No, I don't,
It didn't.
not necessarily,
Well, let's put it this way. I think it didn't, I think the schools were still a big question mark in it,
Yes.
weren't they?
Yes, because we didn't touch.
oh, they are a big question mark. They are.
So it depends. If the school can come down a little bit, then we may have a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got no inclination from the responses back that was going to be even thought, I mean, they're not going to reduce their budgets for this.
One thing I think they would defer, and we talked about this last week, was that $25,000 portion of their capital assessment for Berlin Memorial School. I mean, for Berlin Memorial.
Every little bit helps, but
Yeah.
did this include the jump in? This included the jump in the Assabet number, right?
It did. Yeah, we
Okay.
kept those level, and we kept the full.
We kept them level, or we kept them where
No,
they
no, we
proposed
kept
they
them
had.
what they. Yeah, well, we kept them what they asked for in 21. That's what I.
Yeah, because we don't have much choice on that one. That's almost
Right.
one that you can't touch.
So you see the Berlin Memorial. Oh, let me get to that. Berlin Memorial Capital Assessment.
Because as far as the loan repayments go, we can't touch that.
Right.
So the Berlin Memorial Capital Assessment shows as the full requested capital assessment still. You could take $25,000 off of that and you're at $95,000. So, and that'll add $25,000 to your available revenues. It's actually just deferring the projects that they're requesting. But
June, can I ask an overall question?
Sure.
So how do you actually implement the use of stabilization?
What we would have to do is we would have to, God, it's been so long since we used it for the budget. I believe we would just put it into the, like one of the motions.
Mhm.
Okay.
So like if we were to vote, say we were going to use 100,000.
Right. Hey, that's the number I was going to say.
There we go. So you would have to say that you would appropriate from or transfer from to pay for in the motion. The only thing is we have to remember is that when we're voting it from stabilization fund, is that I believe it has to be a 2/3 vote,
I
Margaret.
was just going to say, I'm pretty sure it's 2/3. Yeah.
So depending
On that particular, on that particular.
on that vote itself from
Right.
stabilization, we would have to do that. Because right now I mean, do we work it around and use free cash to offset the budget and use stabilization to pay for a special article? I mean, you can do it a whole bunch of different ways, but you would have to vote it separately and it would have to be a 2/3 vote. And if it's not unanimous, then it would have to go to a paper ballot.
I think I'd need to hear why we'd have to tap into stabilization at this point though, too. I'd
Well,
like to.
I'll-
Depends on how
I
you
guess
want
what I would say is if now is not the time to tap into stabilization, when is?
Right.
Maybe
I'm
next
serious.
year.
I mean, unless
Well,
the town
you-
offices are on fire
If,
and all of the employees are burning and all of their cars are on fire and all the town vehicles have exploded,
Somebody would
when
have
is
to
the
get it.
when is the recent use stabilization? It's raining outside.
in
I
a
hate to
normal
break it to people.
circumstances, if we had no free cash right now, we would have to hit stabilization to offset anything. But fortunate for us, we actually have a decent free cash this year that we don't normally use to offset the budget. So it's there, it's available this year. But again, it's a one-time shot. Once we use it, it's gone. So
Do you think we save stabilization for next year? Because I'm looking and maybe hearing this as, okay, we actually can get through this year by what we've predicted, but we don't know what's going to happen next year.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
that's what I'm hearing, but maybe I don't understand.
When
Using,
we're saying this year, we're talking about FY21. We're not talking about the current year, are we?
no.
no,
Okay. All right.
So
I think this year we should be okay.
if,
So the taxes come in.
We actually got a notice from the treasurer today that I can't remember the name of the company.
CoreLogic.
There you go. That they actually, which is the biggest mortgage payer, I guess is what it is. So all the escrow accounts actually came through today at 1.2 million. So this at least is a huge weight off our shoulders as far as they're not going to hold it up to because we waited a little bit longer than most towns did. So we got the money. So, but
It's going to alleviate cash flow issues.
Yeah. so this year we should be okay, but
Yeah, but I got a call, a text, and an email from the chief today
Yep.
saying
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
the taxes you paid already really weren't due until the middle of June.
Well, the board voted last night
Well,
to,
You gotta remember though, the
Happy back.
taxes weren't due until May 1st, and we have a lot of people that wait till the very last second
mhm.
to pay taxes anyway. So, yeah, we're gonna have a few.
I guess I should learn to do that, huh?
No, not necessarily.
That's not a skill June wants us to adopt.
It's always nice to pay
So-
your bills on time.
So, I mean, we can work on this, but when we talk about, and you know, as we develop the motions under the budget article, we're going to be able to analyze what kind of one-time cash reserves we're actually using to fund the budget. And when we use one-time cash reserves, that creates this automatic structural deficit in the budget. So when we talk about using stabilization, if we don't use stabilization this year, but we use free cash, or if we used stabilization this year in order to fund our budget, that's considered a one-time, it's considered a one-time revenue source. It's not something that's all
Mhm.
automatically replenished
Right.
like
Right.
through the tax levy. So we can determine what our structural deficit is going to be based on the funding sources.
Yep.
So it's always better to stay away from that to the extent possible. And I can tell you, we're already using some of that. The prior capital articles that we're looking at using to fund the school's capital assessment, those total, I can't remember, 115. We'd be using about a little, 110,500 plus. So if the school didn't come back next year with a capital assessment that large, then we'd be fine. But if they continue to come back, that just carries a structural deficit.
Yep.
You know, I don't really know what to say at this point. You know, on so many levels, the turn that budgeting has taken in the past month is so disappointing because we were on a really good track. At the same time, you know, the delayed town meeting gives us time to really continue to scrub numbers and you know, and recognize the public services that are important to residents. So I think that's probably, that should be one of the main goals, is preserving the essential public services that the residents need and want.
Where are we with like building permits and electrical and all of that? Has that all like slowed down, or is it still going strong? And what about all of those inspections? I mean, I'm just curious where we're standing with all of that, because that's paying some of the salaries that are being in the line item.
Yeah, those are direct offsets. So June, there's the revenues are beginning to slightly decline on the building permit side. So we're seeing you know, a little bit of impact there already. Construction activity, though, overall is still continuing in town, probably because that was deemed an essential service, and so construction activities are continuing. But I think that we do, and we've said it before, I know I anticipate that we're going to continue to see some decreases in those revenues.
I
June,
think we're
what do you
going to
think?
see some, based on what Richard was saying, is that there has been a little bit of a decrease, but it's not stopped. It's continuing. The inspection department has set up some guidelines, some really nice guidelines, as far as being able to keep up with the inspections so that projects are not being held up because of us. There's, I know that we had to shut down one site because they weren't following proper procedures. So that was held up, but they did come back and they did fix that. So that's still going. And like I said, the inspection, and Richard is real stickler as far as making sure that everybody's safe as far as that goes. They've worked on protocols right away. So this is not something that they're just starting now. They actually started as soon as this started, so that they're working on the safety of it. So they're still doing inspections. As far as Richard said the last time, River Bridge is still going. Nothing new has come up. So I just keep in mind with the building, that is going to hit us this year because what we estimated to come in has not come in as high, but I think we may be able to offset it with other things. That's just general fund. The place where we're going to probably see it offset by is by the amount of plumbing and electrical offsets that were left over. That money is set aside. They are not being paid that money until the projects are completed. So it's not that we have to worry about paying them after the fact. I don't know if that answers the question or not. But.
So, Margaret, with the schools, you mentioned that we could see a change in or drop in Chapter 70 funding to the school.
I think they're going to, yeah.
Is that going to flow down to the towns, to us in Boylston?
That depends on the actions the school takes. If their Chapter 70 money decreases and they don't make any adjustments on their expense side, yes, it would.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in terms of, town meeting in Berlin, our only option is to either, for the finance committee, is either say recommend or not recommend and then have the town vote on it. Is that the idea? I mean, that's the only.
Yeah, you might not even, you might not even have, we'll see if you're going to have to be in that position. Boylston voted last night to set their town meeting date at June 15th. And their election is going to be June 22nd. So they're going before Berlin this year.
Yep. Yep.
So I guess we're going to see what Boylston does.
Okay.
And they are, and they have much larger increases in their Tohoto assessment than we do. They're what, 800,000. They're plus 800,000 or something like that. What was I just going to say?
Well, and one of the reasons, I'm going to let you think, Margaret, maybe I could confuse you even further, but when I go back to that summary sheet and the revenue sources, which I guess is general state aid, is only 250,000 for fiscal 21.
Yeah.
And so when I look at that level fund scenario, we're showing 280,000 revenue surplus. So it would kind of be a wash if the state came through with nothing.
Yeah, you could.
Exactly. Yeah, there are some municipalities that are so heavily dependent on their state aid that this makes a huge difference. But this is small. We do have other funding sources that we can rely more heavily on. Of course, we don't want to overestimate the unrestricted general government aid. I think that's going to be one that takes a disproportionate hit.
So really, Chapter 70 becomes one of the big questions for us because, if I'm understanding correctly, with the local tax that the escrow account payments came through, confirmed today, we're not going to have huge surprises in revenue unless something happens with the schools.
Well,
I think we're going to be seeing as we get closer to June 1st, the new tax deadline, we're going to have a much better picture of how tax revenues are coming in. So
I'm premature on that assumption then. Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, tax revenues are what, 90% of our revenue. I mean, they're 85 to 90% of our revenue. So.
But I guess it makes it hard to get down to details for you in June if we don't know what that state aid looks like. Then that 10,000 here or there is going to be hard to figure out.
Well, keep in mind, again, everything that we're picking on is estimates.
Right. Right.
We do that every year. It's based on an estimate on what we feel. I mean, I can remember years back when the state wasn't even coming up with a budget by the time we went to town meeting. So it was just guesswork.
And they sure won't this year.
So it's going to be one of those again where I think if we play it as conservative as we can, without hurting the town, because we don't want to be moving backwards either. But I think that if we just play it conservative and we keep an eye on our spending, even coming into the new year, until we know we're out of the woods, that I think, you know, I think we can swing it. It's just, I think everybody's going to have to tighten up and everybody's going to have to play a part. That's the big thing.
Yeah, but when I look at the fiscal 19, 20, and 21, I look at the state aid there, you know, you all taught me that it dropped way off in 19 because we went to the regional school, right?
Yep.
The check,
So,
yeah.
So it becomes less of a factor in our overall budget.
Correct. It's not as big of a percentage as with the school. If we had lost most of our Chapter 70 money, it would devastate us as far as, you know, I mean, that's a big chunk.
Yeah.
So that's a big unknown for us.
It's a big unknown, but again, it could be a pass through. We could see that on assessments.
Oh, right. I was just going to say, I mean, it's still a huge potential negative. It's just that it's going to be passed through from the schools and not directly in the budget.
That's where I was heading, Stan. Yep.
What happens if we pass a budget with based on certain assumptions about state aid to the schools, and then that's not there, and so the schools don't have that source? Do they come?
So that once the school presents its budget to the town and the town approves it, that is the school's budget.
Yeah.
It's not like it's not like we need to come back and adjust the assessment for them after the fact. So
their budget would include the impact of their estimated state aid.
Exactly.
Margaret,
So if it goes down, it's up to them to.
Well, see, that's what Margaret, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would assume it would be the same way where if, with the regional school system right now, is if we estimate at 100,000 and they get 150,000, and they have a free cash of 50,000, then that would be should be rolled into next year's budget, just like we do with free cash. So what I'm wondering is if they had a shortfall, would they?
If they could absorb it,
into the next years.
I think. Oh, you know, that's a really good question.
I would assume they would have to try to offset it, just like we would if all of a sudden we see that free state aid is decreased a lot. Then we would have to go, oh, we got to like do a spending freeze, or we've got to cut some budgets now to make sure that we stay within our budget. I mean, I would assume they would have to.
That's right. They'd have to take that approach too. I don't know if they appropriate any of their E&D in their budget to absorb things like this. And frankly, when they adopted their budget this year, this wasn't a thing, what we're going through now.
Right.
You know? So I don't know where they stand. They also don't know how they're going to be educating in starting next school year. So there were so many things up in the air, but I did want to mention, and I don't know if I mentioned this at your last meeting, the school committee did meet last week. And I believe it was mentioned that we talked about their transportation contract. They have come to terms, I guess, with their company, their transportation company, and they're still paying 80% of their transportation contract, so that the transportation company won't, lay off their drivers and things. So that was the case before Governor Baker's announcement this week that schools are closed for the rest of the year. So I don't know where the school's going with that. However, I do know you all know, it's a very, very, the school assessments are a very, very big part of our budget. And if we're going through our entire budget, reducing lines, we have to ask what the school is doing too.
Well, how is it that they're paying 80% of a service they're not receiving? Thought we said they can't do that.
I was just going to ask you, how can they legally do
Right.
that? I mean,
I know that Maynard is in the same situation. School committee tried to do something with their bus company, and because it's a signed contract, it's a mandatory pay, and the bus company there also did a negotiation of a reduced rate.
Mhm.
And
That's a
I don't
question. Yeah,
understand.
we
You
need
have
to,
see the contract, right?
yeah, you'd have to see
We
what's
need-
written in the contract.
we need to ask, and I would assume that they've received guidance from DESI on certain things
Yeah.
too that I'm not privy to.
I hope.
Well, I do know, like Janet said, I know other towns, actually, it was mentioned at the school committee meeting that other towns have negotiated similar things
Yeah.
with their transportation.
Well, I'm
companies.
finding a lot of towns are doing a lot of different things that I wouldn't allow, but
I know Maynard furloughed all of the the paraprofessionals, they have like long-term building subs, even though they're in fill-in, you know what I mean? They've either laid them off or furloughed them, saving that money in the budget. But it's not a lot of people, and these are people that aren't getting paid, high salaries either.
So the school has furloughed people this year? That's interesting.
Not our school, but
Oh, another.
other schools have. It was, yeah.
I wonder.
I think Natick, I can't remember all the names of but they did say some schools had furloughed some employees. Like crossing guards, people that are employees for the year, but are,
Again,
yeah.
Again, furloughing, if it's done, I hate to say it, if it's done strategically, it can save on unemployment costs. So that's
Right.
the preferable option to layoffs, I suppose, in some cases.
Yeah.
All right, well, where do we go from here, kids?
I'm going to start, I'm going to go back to those recommended columns. And I'm going to be bringing a bundle of line items to the board on Monday night, the 27th, to make recommendations on any lines that we're fairly comfortable revising. And then I'll bring those same ones to FinCom. So I'll make sure that you get that same information the board is getting. And I'll also have the whole collection of lines that have previously been approved that we don't think can be touched. So at least it gives us a sense that we're still making our way through the budget.
Yeah, and I think we ought to, separate from waiting for the state, it feels to me like we ought to be able to make some assumptions about the other revenue sources and just say, this is our best guess. And this is what we're just going to have to pick.
Yeah.
We can't just keep going and going and going and saying, and balls are up in the air. The balls are going to be up in the air. We have to just decide, are we going to say it's off 10%, it's off 20%, whatever we just need to decide. And I don't think we should hold up the entire process.
I just have a
waiting
question.
For the state. I think we ought to just, especially given that what a small percentage of our budget that is.
Well, the state is also giving us overall construction activity numbers, lottery numbers. They're giving us all kinds of other information, but still, I agree with you.
It's such a small percentage of our revenues. Like, how much is it really going to impact us? When you get down to it, what's the percent of our revenues that's coming from the state?
Well, you've also got to think though too, is that you've got to relook at our local receipts also. But most of our stuff is coming from tax revenues. It all
correct, and the same.
Yep.
So I would say the same thing about the local receipts.
Yep.
We will not know. We just need to make a guess.
The best educated guess you can come up with.
Best guess we can, and
Yep.
we could make that guess now, or we could make that guess in 4 weeks. And I'm not sure we would. What's the difference?
Stan, do you want a target cutoff date? Is that what you're urging us to do?
Stan, would you like June and I to bring recommendations to FinCom next week on those?
Yes, and I think that I feel like next week we ought to just start picking some of these numbers, and it's our best guess, and it's all we can do, and that's what we're gonna have to live with, and then from there on we'll figure out how to do it, whether it's got to later on if we have to have a special, or if it has to come out of stabilization, or if we have to do it out of free cash. We can't just keep saying, well, we just got to wait. We're going to have to see what happens. Well, we can't. We got to just do something. I just feel like we're spinning our wheels.
Town meeting.
Can't we just say like, okay, we're not going to give any raises? Number one, that's straight across the table.
Right. We just need to make some assumptions.
Listen, let's not hit employees first. Let's look at expense lines first, okay? I understand that we may have to go to eliminating COLAs, but
I wasn't necessarily hitting employees. I was just using that as an example.
okay, I understand.
It was just one that came to my mind.
Margaret, I think if you could make recommendations, you and June can make recommendations next week, that would be a good place for us to start.
Mm-hmm. All right, we'll do what we can. I mean, we obviously have some lines flagged that we know are going to be hit, so I will just come up with something.
I think we just need to make our best guess as to what those are going to be. I mean, and we just move on.
Can we do one thing, and then if money comes in and we have a better case scenario, we can then go back and say, okay, now we're going to do this. Is that
we could say that, but then
what
does that mean if the money comes in? What does that mean?
Well, if okay, we're going to take this off the table because we can't afford it, but now, oh, look, we can afford it. Can we then add it back? We can always do that.
We won't know that during this budget process. That's what I'm saying. We will not have that kind of concrete information.
You're talking about sometime during the year.
No, we will know it as we're doing this budget process. As the time goes on, in January, we get a windfall. Can we then go back and revisit some of the stuff we took away? Am I not making sense?
No, Janet, it depends on when that money comes in, is whether or not you can take action, because it would have to be an additional source of income that you could actually go to another special town meeting and vote from. If we don't have free cash by that time, then we can't do it. So it's one of those, it may have to wait till next year on some of these things to go back and say, okay, this is what we wished we could have done. We didn't do this, and try to do it.
All right. I mean, I guess what I would say in answer to Margaret, when you say, don't whack the employees right off the bat, is, one of the things you can do is you eliminate the COLAs this year. And and I'm not advocating this at this point, I'm just saying that if you do that, and then if the revenues do come in and we don't have the dire situation that we had, then next year we can double them up.
There are a lot of different options. Yeah. We also talked about that whole contingency line, which the finance committee can come back to when you're talking about the budget
idea.
Again.
I love the contingency line. I thought I can't believe that's not something we've done before now. I mean, that makes so much sense. That just feels like a win. How many wins can you have? 6, 8, 10 wins? It just feels like a win-win.
As many budget lines as there are.
Well, yeah. I mean, it feels the win-win exponential. I mean, it seems like that's a great. I love that idea.
All right. So next week, then, beyond going back to the budget line recommendations, June and I will continue to talk regularly about. The various lines that we think are going to take a hit and to what extent. So it's, again, we can't really look at this as across the board. We're going to have to take a look at those lines that we know there'll be varied impacts. So we'll do that, and we'll bring recommendations next week.
So, I mean, it violates that you can't just consult one of us. I mean, this has to be at a meeting. So I could offer to you and say, reach out to me and see and include me on some of that stuff. But that would be violation of open meeting laws, right? Because
Well,
then you're,
yeah, but we can bring it to all of you. Can discuss it in open session. Or we could even provide it to you ahead of time to give you
As we're going
some of our
along,
recommendations.
as long as you're not voting in an email or talking amongst, negotiating or whatever. Yeah, you can.
okay.
You can still have the.
Well, and Margaret, don't take this. I mean, I appreciate all that you're doing, and believe me, I just want for me to get it in the afternoon of a meeting that night. I don't have time to digest it. So if it's possible to get it before Wednesday, that would be beneficial to me. I can't get it Wednesday afternoon and process it.
Okay.
So I'm sorry. That's the way with my work
Oh,
schedule.
no, that's
and
fine. I fortunately, what I sent today was not really substantive.
Well,
I was just giving you updates.
Yeah, I mean,
but
we weren't voting on stuff, and I get all that. I just, if you guys are going to have a lot of substantial things that you want our actions on next week, I'd strongly ask if we could get it before Wednesday.
Can I ask, should we try to go to selectmen? Is this something we could do as a group rather than you explaining it to them and then re-explaining it to us? Should we do a group meeting? I mean, it just feels like you go to selectmen, you talk about it, and then we come back and do it here. I didn't know if it's better if we did like a group meeting.
I'll do whatever's convenient for FinCom, whatever you think is the best option. Now the board does have other, obviously other items that they're discussing, but if you'd like to do some sort of joint meetings, I'm sure they'd be willing to do that.
Yeah, I understand what you're trying to do there, Janet. In some ways it makes sense, but I'd prefer fewer meetings and focused meetings. And I think, Stan is asking for that focus on what are the, from the town administrator viewpoint, what are the expenses that we ought to at a minimum, what are the minimums that we ought to be looking at and saying, yeah, we can recommend these.
Stan, do you think it would be helpful if you got it, I don't want to say piecemeal, but piecemeal, line item by line item, versus having it given to you in a spreadsheet form? So like if we were to come up with, I don't know, line items 1 through 5 or something, I don't know, and say, okay, these are our recommendations, and send those out, and then come back and do a couple of others, or would you rather see it as one huge spreadsheet?
No, I mean, we could try it that way and see if that. I mean, I don't know how much are you going to have before Monday? I mean, whatever you guys come up with, you have to present.
What Monday. I'd like to focus on with June, I think, is revenues. I think that we can pick some revenue lines, local revenues, and give some recommendations based on what we realize are going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we could, yes. So in answer to your question, June, I think if we could start nailing down some assumptions that we're going to make on individual portions of it, that yes, that would be beneficial to have sooner rather than later, and to start processing that and getting that thought process going that says, if we're going to assume that this number is 15% less, then that's probably going to affect this, and this. So it would, yes, the more time that you would have that, the better. So it does, yeah, I think that would be beneficial to get that as soon as, if you guys decide on it Saturday morning, then rather than waiting till, to Monday night, that would probably be better to have it Saturday morning.
Stan, I'm hearing though that some of these things need to be taken to the Board of Selectmen.
Well, sure, and I know that they will be, but the Board of Selectmen I don't think is going to change Margaret and June's best estimation of such and such a revenue. I seriously doubt the Selectmen are going to change that. It seems to me that this is more of informing them and getting their approval.
Yeah, because Under the Town Administrator Act, I'm required to give them recommendations, and then after they approve the recommendations, I'm supposed to bring them to FinCom, or FinCom
Right.
takes them up. And
And,
that's the path that we were on, so.
and how many times have they said to you, no, you're not going to do it that way, you're going to do it this way? Has that ever happened? No, you guys are going to carry the weight of saying this is what's going to happen, and they're going to go, okay, that sounds good to me, thank you.
Or they'll
I
pull
don't
up
think-
one and say, no, let's relook at that one. Because actually, I think they have done that once.
I think,
All right, well,
Yeah. But the
and we
majority-
didn't get to all the lines either. So anyway, we're here for the board and FinCom to try to give all of you good, informed data so that you can make responsible recommendations to the town. So
yeah.
that's what we'll work on in the background and get you that.
It's all any of us can do, so is to make our best effort.
Yep. Yep.
Judy's laughing.
Yeah, she is.
If you don't
Well, it's
laugh,
been a
you
long
cry. That's the thing.
We can do this.
Yeah.
I think I can.
We're gonna have to all have T-shirts made up that we survived this.
Yeah, if we do, yeah.
Exactly.
We are. You think I'm kidding? I'm not.
No. So how many, like, when did this shutdown start? Like, when did the real, like,
Governor's
Governor
it's been about
the governor
6 months, and
declared
it's been, what, 4 weeks?
March 10th.
March 10th. That was the date of the.
Okay, so 5 weeks.
Yeah, we're
Like,
5
it's been
weeks
about
in.
6 months.
I was
No,
gonna
it's
say, it feels like forever.
It feels like, it really feels
this
like
was the
forever.
start of the sixth week.
Okay,
That's right.
yeah, so it's been 5.
And keep
we're
in
into
mind, yeah, and
week
keep in mind though, I mean, things were happening on a daily basis after he declared the emergency. There really wasn't a shutdown. There wasn't any, when he declared the emergency, there was barely anything
True.
that we had heard about social distancing.
Right,
or,
right.
You know, that all came, it all rolled out after. So anyway, interesting times. All right, we'll work on this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What say you, rest of the members? Do we have any other business to?
Move to adjourn?
Like Mike's idea.
You think that was a second?
I don't have anything else, Dan, if that's what you're,
That is, yeah, in my roundabout sort of way. Yeah.
Oh, I would like to know how to print.
Oh, you
that.
already seconded. Yeah, sorry.
yeah. So Janet, if we could stay on this.
Yeah,
Zoom
that's what I
meeting.
was just gonna say. I don't know
Oh,
who's in
right.
charge, Margaret. I mean, no, it's Mary Arata that's
Right.
the host. So, yeah, I would like to learn how to do that because it's very hard to go back and forth on all these.
So Mary, hey, can I?
Right.
Mary just reappeared.
Can you let me share the screen with Janet? You're muted.
You're muted, Mary.
Muted, Mary.
Any of you can share if you see the little green box that has the green box that says share.
Right down at
Okay.
the bottom, it says share screen.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
I can-
are we okay adjourned? And I'll just stay with Janet or anybody else that wants to watch the print
Oh,
video.
shall I? If you vote to adjourn. I can
Anybody
stop
wants
the
to watch
recording.
what, Mary?
I'm just going to show Janet how to print. The Excel is on legal paper, but you can
Right.
commit the file to print on paper size. You just have to do one little thing.
We're not
Right.
taping anymore, correct?
No, you are taping. There's a little red blinking dot that says recording. So do you want to take a roll call vote to adjourn and then,
Yes, I want to make a roll call because this is just learning how to use the printer. So Janet.
Hi, Stan.
Hi, Mary.